Bam.
This is Todd Bensman, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
All right, we got it done this time. I want to have Todd come on the show in part because he's an expert in a very particular part of the safety and security of our world, and this relates directly to the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. People often talked about, oh, like the second and third order effects, and then they have nothing else to say. Well, this is clearly what we're going to talk about today, a second, maybe even a third order effect later on. But this is what happens when you have conflict. You have all of these extra things that we're not even technically in this fight. Sure, we're providing some aid to the Ukrainians, but now we have this and have had this influx of Ukrainians at the border. And as I continue to frame this thing, and I want to set up Todd so he can talk and I mostly shut up, but our policy in the US for immigration is screwed up. It's not because Republicans, it's not because of Democrats, it's because we screwed it up as a nation. So we don't have the means to flex in reliably extra capacity to a place like San Ysidro or to Del Rio County, Texas, wherever these places are. It's not easy to just say, oh yeah, we're ready for 100,000 extra people. It's like if all of a sudden your favorite restaurant had 40 times the normal clientele for a month. It would take them a long time to be able to get your, pasta fajoule out or whatever it's going to be. So we have these problems where we think it's Republican, we think it's Democrat. In reality, our border is messed up because we suck at foreign policy. And now when we have this tragedy that's going on with this war in Ukraine, we now have to deal with the threats, the compassion, the asylum, all of these things at the same time. When someone comes to the border, it's not one person from one common country. It is people from all over the place with all kinds of different means and everything. So that's sort of the setup for what we're going to talk about. I'm mostly going to shut up and let Todd talk, but Todd, talk about Ukraine, talk about the border, and why does this stuff matter?
Well, we do have Ukrainians, like you said, coming to the southern border now. Last I heard, there were about 1,000 of them down there. They seem to like coming to Tijuana, but there's also a whole lot of Russians coming too. Probably far more Russians than Ukrainians, but between the two, there are thousands that are coming up through through Mexico, and the idea is that they're going to try to get asylum and get into the United States. They're going to claim asylum and get in, or they're asking for humanitarian parole into the United States. This is sort of an interesting conundrum because, on the one hand, I think that everybody can agree that Ukrainians were victimized in this war, and that they were forced from their homes, and they can't go home right now, so we can't really send them home. But on the other hand, it's strange to have Ukrainians, to be even contemplating Ukrainians at our border, because they already have generous offers from 28 European countries, 3-year residencies, full medical, housing subsidies, first in line for jobs, the equivalent of food stamps, and, in the best countries with the most modern economies, the best social welfare safety nets around. So you have to ask, why are they coming to our border? That's a really strange thing. And I have to say that I've kind of come out against this. I think that this is, I think it's bogus. I think that they don't need to come to the United States. We have enough problems on our southern border right now. We're collapsing down there. We don't need thousands and thousands of Ukrainians now to join in and put pressure on, or to take advantage of the situation, which is kind of what I think is happening. Because European nations are great to live in. We all understand that, France and Germany and Italy, Finland, Norway, those are great places. They're very welcoming but it's still, they don't have the 24-hour Chinese food buffets, man. I mean, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
This is America. We got football, NFL.
What is the distance between me and a taco? Zero. There's always a taco close by.
So I guess it's just a that these are people that are not desperate, that do not deserve asylum. They already have asylum in the best countries in the world. So should we just let them in just because they want to come here? Well, if that's the case, do it the legal way. We're going to be letting in refugees, Ukrainian refugees, stay over there, apply for it like everybody else, wait your turn, pay your fees, live nicely while you're waiting, not in a refugee camp, and do it that way. I don't know. That's my feeling about it. Now, refugees, fine, bring them in. If you want to apply for refugee status, bring them in. There is a um, a counterintelligence concern about the Russians and even some of the Ukrainians too. And so, because one thing that we know is it would be very easy for the Russian intelligence services, or maybe um, some of the Ukrainian people who are in the certain Ukrainian fighting units that are considered extremist by our standards. I mean, while they fly the Nazi flag, we're doing all the best we can to help out the fighting men and women of Ukraine. But unfortunately, I think a lot of that money and energy is going to units that fly Nazi flags. We don't know who these people are when they come to the border. And that's another reason to turn them away, or at least make them wait for a good long time until we can figure out who they are.
Yeah.
And then, Russian intelligence can very easily just come up to the border and commit asylum fraud. What they're doing is I think they're making up an asylum story that goes like this: the Russians, that that Vladimir Putin is arresting anti-war protesters, which we've seen on TV. We were them. So we have to flee. We're against the war. And so they're taking advantage of like something that's kind of in the news.
Right.
And then you would never be able to prove that whether they were or weren't there. But I suspect that probably none of them were actually there protesting the war. It's just my gut from knowing these things. So I think that Russians who lie about that are, dishonorable
Yeah.
and don't belong living among us. And plus, if you're not coming in a regular way, what are you hiding? What is going on in your background that you have to come to the border? All of you.
Right. The Some of the problems with all of this is some of the problems with all of this. That's a great sentence. Some of the problems with this immigration situation that we create is because there's coaching that happens, right? And it is an absolute fact. And if you come and say, I need asylum because if I return home and I will be killed, and if you see these magic words with it, because I am homosexual, guaranteed asylum. Prove it. No, there's no test for this, right? And so this is known, and you get to come up, and as long as you're willing to say those words, come on in. And then really that's where our level of any kind of rigor in the process, like, it literally ends right then. Like, come on in. That's it. Done.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty stupid. I mean, people just take advantage of us, of our stupid systems all the time. I mean, even Max Klinger in from MASH couldn't get
Right.
his Section 8. All through 8 season, Max Klinger couldn't get his Section 8.
Even wearing dresses that
Right.
he's like, yeah, never mind. Yeah.
So, but here you're in. If you claim you're Max Klinger, you're in immediately. And that's kind of I just wrote a piece for the Federalist that ran yesterday
Mhm.
that is about this, how easy it is to game our system because we're about to do away with Title 42, which is the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one where we can expel every migrant we catch, and we don't let them apply for asylum. They're ineligible for asylum under Title 42. And the progressive left in this country have been fighting tooth and nail to get 42 removed so that they can return this asylum system. to the masses. Well, the reason that they want to return the asylum system to the masses is so that the masses can get in with a stupid story
Right.
that you don't even have to verify. It's
Yeah.
the Supreme Court says you do not have to verify their stories. You just have to believe at about 10%
Mhm.
may be true,
Yeah.
10% true.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you're in, and then you disappear. And that's just a recipe for mass fraud. That's why those progressives want Title 42 gone. They want that asylum system back out there so that just millions of people can come in and use it. They get right in for that. So it's just very easy to game our asylum system, bottom line.
I'm no math genius, but if you need 10%, the words "I will be killed if I go home. I am gay" is 11 words. You said the word "I" 3 times. That's 30%. Like, you're
That's
you're
right.
good. 'Cause I, not a lie, right? So
I mean, you don't even have to say that anymore. You can say, I'm afraid of gangs in my
yeah,
neighborhood because the Trump administration took the gang thing off the table because everybody was like, oh my God, gangs, because it was in the news and everybody was getting in on the gang thing. So Jeff
right.
Sessions took that off and Biden put the gang thing back on. Or a better one than I'm gay or gangs is my husband beat me.
Mm,
Prove that.
right,
You
right.
know, did you get that on video? Yeah. So that
And I wanna
that
say this because these things get really challenging. I don't think we're not talking about an anti-immigration policy. We're talking about a sane immigration policy, one that actually cares for the individual past the point of getting them through the gate. Like, let's, I know we don't have an Ellis Island, and I'm not saying Ellis Island is ideal, but we need some place to look, people aren't trying to immigrate through Canada to here, right? That's not the problem. And if you conversely try to go to Canada, boy, they're not so welcoming as we are. So let's still be welcoming, but let's have a front door and then be able to direct people towards whatever kind of case management they might need instead of just this insane, like, I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't bit us in the butt. I mean, there was an atrocity today in New York City where someone shot a bunch of people on a subway, and we don't know who that person is yet or what everything else, but targeting us is not hard to do, especially if it's that easy to infiltrate. Are you at all worried about the Ukrainians trying to get into the country?
no, not really. I mean, I'll tell you what the issue with the Ukrainians in my experience, I haven't done a lot of work with Ukrainians or about Ukrainians, but I just kind of know through osmosis, I guess, working in the intelligence field for as long as I did, that Ukrainians are there's a lot of you can't generalize, but there is a lot of organized crime in Ukraine. Gangsters. There are Ukrainian gangsters in the United States, like New Jersey, New York. They get
Right.
busted every once in a while. They make RICO cases, and they can be dangerous and they can be violent. And we don't really know if the people coming in at the border or if they are going to apply for refugee status if they're organized crime. We don't want to be bringing in a bunch of Scarfaces,
Right.
like the
Or
guy in the
potential
movie.
scar faces, yeah. One of
Yeah,
the things about it, immigrants or refugees or people that don't have enough when they get here, they end up, a lot of them, being extra legal, and this is, again, where gangs operate and the mafia, they're not willing to be part of the system because they're not part of this system, right? We haven't compelled them to or anything, and so you do get this criminal element, and it's not that all immigrants are criminals, we're not saying that, but the mafia existed because that was their form of governance when all those Italian folks got here, and so they just retained their form of in what we would call informal rule, what they would call the law.
yeah. Well, that's right. Listen. We're going to end up with, we might have 100 or 200,000 Ukrainians living here. They're probably going to be just fine, most of them.
Right.
But it's every time that we extend our hearts and resources and country, we pay for it in these other ways. I mean, it just is a fact of life.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess that's just who we are. I mean, we're just going to take the risk, and we're going to do that. But the other thing about Ukrainians to keep in mind is that Ukraine is the poorest country in the European theater.
Mm,
It is not a healthy country. So, um, people want to live in the United States. So they may try to use the war to not return to their countries, to live here forever to their country. And there's an argument to be made for, your country like
right.
needs you to build your country. How about you not abandon your country and you build it? You go back
Yeah.
and you build it and have some. They seem very very patriotic and proud of what they've done in the war, and they wouldn't have fought if they didn't have patriotism,
Right.
some kind of feeling about their country and themselves.
Hmm.
But you're always going to have people that are just like, I want to live in the U.S., man. It's just the way it is.
When you pick things to study, in terms of your fellowship, is it geared towards a certain ethnicity or nationality that you do, or are you more of a generalist and you look at the whole problem?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of that.
Yeah, when you're studying things, you have a fellowship that looks into immigration. So when you're trying to decide what to study, how do you parse out what groups or what functions or systems you're looking at?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm an employee. I'm a research and an analyst for Center for Immigration Studies, and kind of my area is the nexus between national security and immigration.
Yeah,
And that's a pretty big umbrella.
yeah,
So anything that's kind of around in that under that umbrella, I can study and write about, and I'm grateful to be able to do that too. Um, and so I don't always stick strictly to that. Sometimes I'm into policy, but that's like the book America's Covert Border War is. It's a national security issue about the southern border. That's one of many. And we have plenty of others too. I just mentioned a couple, like intelligence service officers coming in. We have people coming from Iran and Lebanon and Venezuela. I just wrote it recently about a case. This is a true story where we have a lot of Venezuelans crossing over right now, thousands, tens of thousands, because they heard that the border was open. And Venezuela has been partnered up with Iran and Hezbollah for decades under Hugo Chavez. So they're embedded there because there's a huge Lebanese diaspora,
mm,
hundreds of thousands in Venezuela, and a lot of them are they're Hez. They just are. We know that. There's good reporting on that. And one of them crossed the Rio Grande at Brownsville, got caught. They ran his fingerprints, and he pops on the FBI's watch list, terrorism watch list. And he pops as a somebody with significant derogatory intelligence, a Category 5, Group 5 member of a terrorist organization, a flight risk. The FBI interviews the guy, and they're like, do not release this guy. Keep this guy in custody until further notice. And a call goes out to ICE headquarters in DC, and they cut him loose. And the reason is because he was overweight, and that was viewed as putting him at risk of catching COVID in the detention facility. So they let a Cat 5 terrorist on the FBI's watch list, in spite of the FBI's recommendation and judgment that he was a flight risk and
yeah,
a high risk. That guy's running around in Detroit right now pursuing what? An asylum claim. I don't know what he's going to claim, but
yeah.
he's here.
When you look at the results of national security, also still a big window, still a big umbrella to work underneath. But when has this policy or this lack of a policy or lack of coherent policy, when has this bit us in the butt? Like, what are some instances that maybe don't make the news where you're like, there's a guy, like, I mean, because look, we have goodwill, but it's not returned 100%, right? There are people that have bad will or are in a spot where they have to act in a way they wouldn't because they don't have enough, because we don't have a good system for finding and supporting these guys. So what are the actual costs that we've paid in terms of security?
Well, for one thing, we have counterterrorism programs at the border and throughout Latin America, where we're supposed to be out there trying to hunt these guys down. We spend a lot of treasury doing that. We're trying to break up these intercontinental smuggling organizations.
Right.
Let me know if I'm not answering your question.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, okay. Because I think I understood your question. The programs, in my opinion, my estimation, have been very successful
Mhm.
catching jihadists and intelligence service people coming over that border. Uh, and like the one I just mentioned, he flagged on a terror watch list. But we've had some close calls with these guys. We have not been attacked. You would have heard about it. Canada got attacked though.
Mm.
One Somali crossed through California in 2017 and or 2012, I guess, and he
Mhm.
made his way to Canada, Alberta, and he conducted a double vehicle ramming attack with an ISIS flag, wounded a bunch of people, attacked a police officer, ended up with some lifetimes in prison up in Canada. Well, I think we dodged that bullet, and I also think that we've had cases where people got in and we caught them later. There was a Hezbollah guy that crossed in the trunk of a car from Mexico into California. I want to say that was an old case, 2004, 2000.
Mhm.
And years later, we caught him up in another investigation. He was a huge Hezbollah clandestine agent with stockpiles of weaponry, and he had a high rank. His brothers were all high ranking Hezbollah people. He was a Unit 910 guy.
Yeah.
And they busted him, and he ended up with prosecution and trial. And he spent prison time, and then we deported him. He came over the Mexican border in the trunk of a car. We've had quite a few Somalis cross in who were Al Shabaab, lying about who they were.
Right.
And then luckily, we had like an FBI informant inside the detention center in Pearsall, Texas, caught two of them that way. Two different Hezbollah or Al Shabaab guys,
Yeah.
and had big, expensive trials, and all the evidence came out about their terrorist activity. And one of them was planning to do some kind of a bombing here, and they caught those guys and put them in prison. And things like that do happen. They don't make any press, really.
Right.
I've always thought that was strange, but whatever. It's not my business. Those are great stories. Like, why don't
Yeah.
you want? I mean, that's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing is like you can minimize that, right? Until that person's in your shopping mall or at your Starbucks or whatever it is, and they detonate or they do whatever it is. Then you look around like, how the heck did we let this happen? Well, we have this chaotic immigration policy for one. And then, yeah, we spend all these resources on counter-terror stuff. And I don't want to act like the counter-terror teams are not busy. I promise those guys are working more than 80 hours a week, if at all possible. These guys are, they're, it's a calling to work in that field, as you know. And so we're getting lucky because our goodwill is there's a tax on our goodwill, and it is some threat. There is some danger, and there will be attacks. There absolutely is. Someone is going to do some kind of attack again, and the next time won't be the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I have my fingers crossed. And when we have a mass migration event like the one we're in right now, and that's about to get really bad, all of these programs that I've been talking about that are in the book just become strained beyond, functionality. And what I think is going to happen is, if it does happen, It's going to be because of that. This mass migration thing has just nothing is normal. Everything's off the rails. I wrote another piece a couple months ago about a Yemeni who was caught in Mexico, just like on the other side of the Texas border in Piedras. And the Mexicans caught him, and they called us up. We go in there. He's on the FBI's terrorism watch list. So normally, what they do with these guys, they don't release them for COVID. They deport these guys, and we had the Mexicans deport him back to Yemen, and in April of last year, and he was back 3 months later. They caught him again in Piedras in July of last year, and by July, the number of migrants was so vast and swarming on the Mexican side that they had no choice, but they hung on to him for a little while. And our side was just jammed up too. That was like, I think that month we had 213,000 apprehensions, like a world record.
Yeah.
And for us, and so the Mexicans just let him go they just let him go they had to clear the detention facilities. And the way I know about it is somebody shared the bolo with me, be on the lookout
Right.
document on it, saying, hey, if you see this Yemeni terrorist, catch him. So that's disconcerting that kind of thing is happening. I don't know if they caught him, but I don't want to find out that we didn't catch him when he shoots up a shopping mall or something, or stabs.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking in this case, I had you on to talk a little bit about Ukraine. You've written that story. But the thing is you read a story basically a week. And so like that's already almost old news and we barely pay attention. But the reality is those Ukrainians are there and the Russians are there. And when I was in Del Rio County and I talked to the judge there, he said, I got people from over 100 countries. Right. And so we have this provisioning, like, how do you manage this? How do you have enough? And I just like to throw the interpreter problem in there. How do you have enough interpreters on contract waiting to go? May not have anybody from Sri Lanka these next 2 months, but you have to have someone on speed dial to be like, oh my God, we think we got a Sri Lankan, and you're not going to hopefully employ a person to speak Sri Lankan and have them not work for months at a time either. There are a lot of multilinguists that can do things, but it's all of these things like the medical influx for Del Rio County, Texas. That whole county is not very big. There's 80,000 people in the entire county. So their medical facilities are appropriately sized for that, not for another 100,000 people coming across. So all of these provisioning things, Todd, it's insane. And then you have this thing with Ukraine that absolutely sucks up resources even more, right? Unexpectedly.
That's right. Well, what's about to happen though is when they take Title 42 down, they're predicting, U.S. intelligence is predicting this, that there could be anywhere from 12,000 to 18,000 migrants crossing a day.
Wow.
A day. That's, if you take the worst case scenario there, you're looking at 540,000 a month. If you take the lesser, it's still 320,000 a month. The most we've ever had, I think, was 213. Like in the history of the country.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea. Well, those people are going to be pooling up on the Texas side, on the Arizona side by the thousands. And that's why they're calling out FEMA. They've triggered FEMA because this is like a Hurricane Katrina event.
Right.
They're getting ready for something that is on the order of, really mass, like an earthquake or something in Haiti, or, really something big. So, that's going to be very resource intense. I don't know where they're going to put them. They're probably going to have to just release them. I don't know how they're going to drive. They're trying to marshal fleets of aircraft so that they're getting them together now. They're putting extra bed space on facilities, like in tents, 500 bed tents, attaching them onto Border Patrol facilities pre-existing. this is going to be a real resource challenge.
When you look at the difference between California and Texas and how they handle it, one of the things that the judge taught me when I was there talking with him is that there is an internal political problem. So you have the Governor Abbott of Texas, who's Republican and has presidential aspirations. You have President Biden, who obviously is a Democrat. And so President, or I should say Governor Abbott, doesn't necessarily want to help President Biden do well. He also wants to help his Texans. And so there's a little bit of problem within that part, and that part of the machine doesn't work well. Does it work better in California since you have this Democratic alignment with the governor and the president, or is it also a problem there as well?
Well, it's not the same problem because the California border, where at the spots where there's infrastructure, roads and buildings and vehicles and everything, is walled. They've got really good fencing out there. Some of it's double layered, so it's pretty tough to cross the border in the populated areas. So they're actually in California having great benefit from the walls that they hate so much in California. But in Texas, you don't, it's just, you've seen the river there. It's very difficult to get fencing up over there, and
Yeah.
plus they canceled the fencing project. So you have
Yeah.
like these gaps. Like there's a famous one in the Yuma area called the Gap. That's what everybody calls it, just the Gap. And it's like this one segment. That's all they need. They needed like one more day to put up the pallets or the slats for the one more segment. And they ran out of time. And so that's where like just thousands, tens of thousands of migrants are just pouring through this gap every week. you know, Yuma's like one of the hottest spots there is because there's a gap. There's a gap in the fencing there. Fencing works. They go to where there's no fencing.
Right.
They,
There's a,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that if you there was a funny story in the Dallas Morning News over the weekend where this reporter went to the Big Bend National Park, which if you've
Yeah.
ever been to Big Bend National Park
I have.
and you go to the river, if you look up on one side, it's like 1,500 feet straight up of a cliff.
Right.
And then the same thing over there with like an escarpment that's going this way. Like you have to be like a super great mountaineer to be able to even touch any of that. And the reporter's like, I don't see any crisis here. There's no
Yeah.
border crisis.
Yeah. 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 And by the way, if you did, like you could literally, we have this capability now, you could, if you're an entrepreneurial type person, put people on top of that rock because there are tourists that go on top of it, have attach them to a drone and just bzzz right across the river and they'd be in. And you'd be like, oh, these are tourists.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. I don't think I would do that.
Oh, yeah, but if you're desperate to get there, and I'm being a little bit silly, you can literally walk across the river though in parts
Yeah.
of Big Bend Park,
Yeah.
and then if not there, go 30 miles in either direction, and you can't have enough people. And the one dude sitting there in a Chevy Blazer or whatever vehicle they use is literally all by themselves. Yes, they're attached to a radio, but they can't be alert all the time. It wouldn't be hard to get the bulge on somebody like that. That's part of Texas is
Yeah.
as remote as anything there is,
Yeah. I mean, the point I'm making is that, when you have fencing,
Yeah.
people that are against the wall are always saying it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are you saying anything about it if it doesn't work? But it does work.
It does work.
There are Olympians, young, physically fit, brave, bold men that will climb up and then down the other side. But man, that's like a few Olympians, man. There's no,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even, you put a 30-foot ladder up there and I wouldn't climb up that thing.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
pretty significant barrier. Yeah. And then the funny thing is like you said, it's like the opposite of a NIMBY. It's a YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't like the bend of the wall, but we'll take the benefit of having it here. And I look, I don't like a wall either. I wish we didn't have to do this. And I don't know. And this is ultimately going to be the question for you, but I don't know what else we can do. Like we're putting a place like, the Del Rio County folks, that they just are not provisioned, and the federal government isn't provisioning them. And if they do, somebody else comes into office, then they're not provisioned, and it's still their problem. These are people that have ranches that are on the border, and now you're putting them in. And here's what the judge said that was really powerful to me. He's like, I'm worried. He's like, first off, I got elected to do certain things. I don't even have time and resources to do the things I'm supposed to do because I have this stupid problem that I have to deal with. This guy's a Democrat, by the way. And he said, I'm worried that my neighbors will have to defend to the death their property with someone coming across the border, and they're going to kill somebody, and it's going to scar them for the rest of their lives because we were incapable as a government of removing that possibility, and that's as viable thing as looking at the human crisis of people being stuck on one side of the border, living in tents and all those other kind of things. Nope, none of this is any good, Todd. What do we do, man? What do we do?
Well, that's a big question.
Thank you.
Look, in my opinion, the thing that works is that you take off the table the possibility of accessing the asylum system. To me, the asylum system is the root cause. It's almost the only root cause that there is. And whether you open the door to the asylum system or close the door to the asylum system is what matters, because it's so easy to game that when the world hears the asylum system's open again, you can go in there and just say the 3 words and you're in.
Yeah.
That's when they come. What Donald Trump did was he took it off the table. He took the benefits of it off the table, and they stopped coming. The numbers declined to 20,000, 30,000 a month, which sounds high, but imagine 540,000 a month, or even what we've been having, which is 180, 170,000 a month, stratospheric. They're coming. They come when they find out that they can claim asylum.
Yeah.
Period. And how do I know this? Because I spend gobs of time with them in Mexico and beyond, and we talk. I interview these people day and night for months and months on end, and that's, hey, why'd you come? Well, we heard that you could just get in by saying, if you bring a kid and claim asylum, or whatever it is, whatever
Right.
they hear the thing is that gets them into the asylum system, that's what they're doing. So what Trump did was he had this thing called Wait in Mexico, which I know you probably have heard of, MPP. The brilliance of it was that the thing that entices people to claim asylum is this, that you can off ramp into the United States and stay there. Win, lose, or abandon your claim, you're still in forever. And so that's the enticement of asylum. Well, what Trump did, he says, win, lose, or abandon your claim, you're going to be in Mexico when that happens. And none of them came for the great Mexican dream. Nobody came for the great Mexican dream. When that's happened, they did one of two things. They went home. Nobody cares about asylum. None of them want asylum beyond the initial I got in. After they get in on it, they could care less. 50% of them just don't even bother following through with the claim.
Right.
The rest of them just get turned down by judges because they're not qualified for asylum.
Right.
And when Trump said you're going to be in Mexico when you lose, they didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
How do I know that? Because I went there and I interviewed a whole ton of them.
Yeah.
That got pushed back, and I'm like, "What are you going to do now?" And they're like, "This wasn't what we planned. We just thought we'd get in. We were going to get in. That's all they cared about."
Right.
So they're going home. And I interviewed a ton of them. They're going home, and I interviewed a bunch of the newer ones who said that they came when Biden entered office because they didn't want to wait in Mexico for asylum.
Right.
And so the first thing Biden did on day one was he got rid of remain in Mexico. And guess what? everybody stampeded for the border.
I
Then
don't
they
know.
put Title 42 in,
Right.
took it off the shelf again, and nobody came. Now
It's
now they're about to put it back in, and because of that they're expecting 540,000 a month. It's about asylum. It's our system,
okay.
and that's what I would do. Is I would just make it. I would probably recommend that it be eliminated entirely. You just don't even have it anymore.
And
Um,
can we compel someone, like if you come from Ukraine and you abandon 28 opportunities to have asylum provided for you on that continent, aren't we capable of saying you are welcome to go to any of those countries, but you can't just jump to us, you know?
no, because
Yeah,
because the trick to asylum is that you don't have to prove it until 5 years from now.
right,
You get to just come in right now on a claim, and then the backlog is 4.5, 5 years. So by the time a judge gets around to saying no, you pass through 27 perfectly great countries.
right,
So no, they just say we're going to put a deportation order on you, and the Ukrainian can just go, "Good luck finding me."
right, right. Are we being unfair to people by asking for these controls to be there? I mean, is this exclusive? Is this harmful in some way? Is it heartless? I mean, like, I feel bad about telling immigrants they can't come in or refugees, whatever. Like, I want them to come here. That's my favorite American is the next one. I love it. But I also know that be we can't just default to our heart all the time because there, as an intel guy, I know there are people that have evil intention towards us, towards our partners, towards our allies, towards religious people, and and um and that's a real threat. And I can't. If I was president, I couldn't look people in the face and say I'm going to defend you, and then have this kind of policy that's so permissive. Like, hey, I want people to come in. Let's see how many we can get of those 500,000 from the month. But if we can only get to 10,000, hey, sorry, you're gonna have to wait somewhere else. You know.
No, I hear you. So I spend a lot of time with the migrants, and I empathize with them. I understand. If I were in their situation, I would do what they're doing. Totally, I would do if I knew that I could get an edge on the Americans and get in there, I would do it. But the problem is that there are 700 million people in the world that live under extreme poverty,
Right.
and we can't take twice our population. At some point, you have to just be that hard edge. You know what it's like? If you were to take this is maybe a no, I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to just say this. But if you were to take the average American into a slaughterhouse and watch those cattle being like up close with the TV camera right there, slaughtered one after another after another, you'd never eat another hamburger again. You'd free them all.
Right.
You would like free the cows. People can't take looking at that up close, and that's kind of what an animal shelter, kill
Mm,
shelter.
mhm.
Take any average American to a kill shelter and watch them do euthanasia all day long. We can't take it. We can't
Yeah.
do it. We're humans. We can't look at that and not free the animals. And immigration is the exact same kind of thing. You have to look people in the eye who are weeping with cute little children and just say no.
Yeah.
And we can't do it. That's what the problem is with the immigration problem. We can't look them in the eye and say no. And half the country is just like, let them all in. I'd do it too. But, you have to have a country. We'd all free the cows too if we saw what was happening on a daily basis, you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, you start thinking about how smart a pig is, and you're like, "Oh, how they taste delicious," but it's a little bit creepy, and you can find yourself in that spot. I mean, we do lead with our heart. We do love immigrants here, and then I'm giving a big pass to the folks who cast aspersions towards anybody who's like, "Hey, we want to have a sane immigration policy." Um, we do have to have something like that. We do have to protect one another. We do have to maintain some accountability for our people. You can't just come in and be completely outside the law because we don't have the mechanisms to do it. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you hire a whole bunch of judges and they just sit there at the wall, and you come up, present your case, and they yay nay you, and they're the ones that say no. I don't know, but what we're doing now, it sure as heck doesn't work. And then here's the thing: the next person that comes in, it looks like for right now, today, we'll have another Republican president. Maybe things will change in 2 weeks, and things will go that way, but only because Joe Biden's done so terribly. Um, they're going to change the policy, and it'll probably be bad in their direction. I mean, this is not a party exclusive failure. Like, both parties are bad at this.
Yeah, but the thing is that what's happening now with the end of deportation, like they ended deportation in America. There's no mainstream Democrat in history of modern history that would have ever countenanced a thing like that.
Mm.
It just the policies that they're talking about that they put in place are dismantle detention centers,
Right.
abolish ICE,
That's just nonsensical.
end all deportation, ignore all the laws that are on the book,
Yeah.
which they're doing. They're just literally flagrantly making it up, new stuff as they go. And those are things that Barack Obama would never have touched, and Bill Clinton would never have touched either. So we're like in a really weird. The Democratic Party is in a super weird place
Yeah.
with these policies. They're not regular mainstream Democratic Party policies. They are fringe, radical, extremist stuff that came off of like street graffiti in Portland, with Antifa. I mean, it's all the same stuff that it somehow got into mainstream presidential candidate platforms, all of it. So what's happening right now, and the reason we're having this huge number in is because they don't understand that these policies are the thing that the migrants are looking for to come. It's
right.
the thing that is making them stampede to the border because they don't know how long this great thing is going to last. Everybody's got to get in.
Yeah.
The Title 42 was the last thing that they had that took asylum off the table. And now asylum is about to be put on the table again. And man, that's what they're coming for. That is what it's going to be about. They're going to come for that asylum, off ramp. I declare asylum. I'm a yam farmer in Honduras. Listen, the asylum law was born to very noble purpose. There's a reason why we put that law in there. It's because there are people who are troubled and are fleeing terrible political persecutions, like Hitler's and refugee, Vietnamese communist re-education camps in North Korea and that sort of thing. And we're not going to send those people home. That's what asylum is for. Those people. It's not for poor Guatemalans that have a crime problem in their neighborhood.
It's crazy, man. It's frustrating when I hear you talk about this, because I know you spend a lot of time, like you said, talking to the people that are trying to come across the border, and it breaks my heart that we're trying to figure this out, and we do such a bad job about it, and then it becomes this radical approach to. Abolish ICE doesn't make sense. ICE exists for a reason that we all agreed upon at one point. Could we soften ICE up a little bit? Okay, sure, I'm willing to try that, but this abolish and tearing down things and just ignoring the threat that's there. We see so much of the world in chaos all the time. How many we hate Russians right now. I don't even want to call it a Moscow mule anymore, right? Well, how many Russian, and since they're all oligarchs, how many Russian oligarchs do you want sneaking across the border from Mexico? It doesn't make any damn sense. It's frustrating because I know we can do a better job, but we're not doing it.
Well, we're not in a place as a country. We're too divided on this. Immigration is just too divisive. We can't agree. If the way things have broken out is that enforcement of any kind is regarded as cruel and mean. Humane immigration policy, compassionate immigration policy means letting everybody in. So
Yeah.
it's either you're being humane because you're letting everybody. Compassion is everybody gets in who wants in.
Right.
Like, how did we get there?
Yeah.
How did we go to that? That's what compassion and a humane policy means.
Right.
No enforcement. Any enforcement is cruel and inhumane.
And
That's
the
what.
reality is, and you and I both know this from talking to people, 5 minutes after you let that person in, the inhumane things begin. Are you telling me that teenage girls that come in and just released into the nation, you're telling me that they're treated humanely once they're here? Fuck no. Not a chance in hell. There's all kinds of exploitation going on and all kinds of illegal activities. And, you know, it's not humane to abandon somebody, you know,
Well,
and say that, hey, they're good now. Now that they're here, they're perfect. Especially in a country that everybody claims is so shitty. Hey, like, here you go. You're welcome into this shitty place. I mean, come on. It doesn't make it doesn't, it's not logical and it's not true because I know how the government works. Usually the opposite of the thing that they want to have happen is what happens.
right. So, you're talking about we're going to have a humane policy. Well, you put the asylum out there on the table, and next thing you know, you have 100,000 people from around the world going through the Darien Gap jungle,
Right.
which is this highly dangerous passage, and they're getting killed there. But they would be alive today if Biden hadn't put that policy in that triggered them to come.
Right.
And
Right.
so you can draw a direct line between a policy decision in Washington, D.C., and a bunch of dead, rotting children's corpses in the ditch in Darien.
Yeah.
I talk to these guys. I always ask the migrants, I'm like, so did you go through the Darien? What was it like? And, oh my God. And they'll show me videos and pictures that they took along the way.
Yeah.
And some of them, like one guy, Senegalese.
Mhm.
They'd all traveled together. They'd grown up since they were kids. Senegal, by the way, is a great country. There's no problems with Senegal. It's a peaceful, calm, Northern Africa country that's economically doing well. But, everybody wants to live in America and the door's open.
Yeah.
And one of their best friends was shot and killed right in front of them in the Darien. And he's showing me the videos of them. Everybody was trying to save him, and they couldn't save him. And I asked, well, what's the story with this guy? How come he came? And the bottom line was, well, we heard that the Biden had opened the border.
Yeah.
So the guy that died there and all of us made a decision together to go to Biden's border.
Yeah.
And that guy would be alive. So what's humane and compassionate about that?
Nothing.
You're opening the borders out of this idea that you're being humane and compassionate.
Right.
You're getting all these people killed that would be alive today otherwise. I know that sounds harsh, but it's literally true. It's literally true. It's a direct, blood is on your hands for making those decisions. Now, most Americans don't see this. They don't understand that people are coming because the door opened, and you opened the door, and you're staying home if the door is closed and living.
This is not the only time this happens. When I was in Afghanistan, I could talk to the ag teams that are trying to improve the condition of farmers. And I invented this saying called, you can't presume to improve the condition of something that you refuse to stand the condition of. You can't say, I'm going to improve a lot of farmers. I'm going to teach them how to sell these pomegranates for more money. And then I asked the question, because I'm like, Todd, I'm like, hey, what's the market chain from this farmer to the consumer in whatever country it goes to? I don't know. Well, then how are you fucking with it? You can't just invent stuff, because now with this policy, you also allow people who traffic people to exploit the people that are there to take more money from them. And by the way, second order effect, again, if you brain drain Ukraine, if you brain drain Haiti, how the heck do these countries ever recover if all of the money and all of the smarts are leaving? And the people who are like, I'm just going to stay no matter what, not saying they can't do things, but how do you get people to want to go back to this place that's effed all the time? And there is corruption everywhere. We're not, hey, I can just go live in Chatsboro, name a place, right? But I can go live in Nashville like everybody else in America wants to do. We're gonna go live in Nashville instead of, I don't know, anywhere. Minsk. I don't want to go back to Belarus. It sucks there. I'm gonna live in Sacramento, right? And so you deny these places their ethnicity, their culture, they're wonderful people. That's not humane to do that either.
No, I mean, I think the smart move eventually, if we ever can get it together, is, the reason why people come over the border is because we don't provide enough of a legal gateway,
right,
for people to come in. We keep it. I mean, we're very generous. We let 1 million people a year in.
Yeah.
Probably we let more people immigrate legally into the United States than any other country in the world. So it's not that we're not generous, but I don't think we could ever open the legal gates far enough to suck up the demand from the border. Is the problem with that. But I guess we could make it easier for people to legally immigrate, but it's we don't. It's difficult.
Yeah,
come in legally. Half of the migrants that I meet down there have already filed official petitions for this or a student visa for that and for this, and they're like, yeah, I got turned down, but I'm going to get in this way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I tried the system. It didn't work. I'm going to go around it because you guys don't care. Right. It becomes the system for sure. Hey, I've had you for about an hour. Anything you want to say in closing? Everybody should definitely go check out. Well, first off, hey, Dickie, what up? Thanks for hanging out with us. Always great to have you. And then here's Todd's book, America's Covert Border War. You want to read that because you'll understand just how wide this problem is. And when we look at what we're allowing in and all of the ways to trick the system, there in effect is no system. So thanks, Todd, for coming on. I'll give you the last word. What do you want to say to these people before we shut this thing down?
Oh, just keep your eye on Title 42 if you're going to be interested in this topic. When they get rid of Title 42, there's supposed to be this really significant wave that will change America. And I don't mean just demographically, I mean in third, fourth order effects and politically. One interesting thing about it is to watch is that there are now about a dozen Democratic lawmakers who are banding together asking the Biden administration not to do it.
Wow.
To just hold it off because, not because it's good for America, but because
it's costing seats. Yeah.
It's going to cost them seats. These are going to be people that are in kind of swing and this is just going to look terrible. You want, the cameras and TV and everybody's over there in Ukraine. But when that happens on our border, they're all coming home and going to the border. That's going to be the biggest American story you've seen in a long time.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Let me shut this thing down. Stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much